Let me stay this way. Jesus, there's freedom in your name. You break every chain, oh Lord, 'cause you are above.
Welcome to the Warrior's Way. Our warrior this week is John. Say good morning.
Good morning.
We are at UCAN Studios. If this is your first time, please go to spiritualwarfareunit.com. You can click on there, and if you know someone that's struggling with food or clothes or baby formula, healthcare, schooling, go on there. We got 17 different partners in the community that help people for free or next to free. And if you're doing good, please pass that information on to someone who you know that can help it. All right, how are we doing this morning, Bud?
I'm doing excellent.
All right, so you are my friend John, who is the pastor of Emmanuel in Flint and Grand Blanc, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and since the last time we were here, I think we launched Grand Blanc.
Mm-hmm.
So the second campus over on Saginaw and something Maple.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how's that going?
It's going pretty well. It's been exciting to be able to help a church that was on their way out, a church that was dying, to be able to add some life, some excitement, and God's doing some cool things there.
Yeah, what was, when it started off, it was really low, right?
Yeah, it was down to about 25 people, 25 to 30 people, somewhere in that range. So.
Yeah, and I remember talking to somebody, I think it was Toby, who's a great human being, by the way.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's like, I just want to hear kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, uh-oh. And last Sunday, you were hearing them.
Yeah.
Woo! It was loud. Bunch of kids. Nursery was full. Good stuff. Had a great time. Did a little upwards program for the football, right?
Yeah.
And had the awards. The kids came up in their outfits. Did the little hot dog thing. It was a good time.
Yeah.
How many kids we ended up having for that football program?
I think we ran 75 to 80, somewhere in that range.
75 to 80 kids in that football program.
For the football program, yeah.
Man, that's cool. So what's next for the Upward program?
So we're going to be starting our basketball program. Matter of fact, you can already register online for that now. And
How do they do that?
You go to the website, and there's a link for Upward.
What's the website?
wearemanual.life.
Wearemanual.life. So if your kids need something to do, they can go on there and do the football program. And what's the cost?
So if you register, I believe, before the end of the month, it's $75.
And what's that get them?
It gets them the uniform. It gets them 8 games. It gets them some prizes at the end of the year.
Okay.
About 12 total weeks of practice and games. It's incredible. Last year we had about 300 kids participate.
Man, that's cool. Yeah. All right, so let's see. Since the last time we talked, you wanted to come on because you had an idea of a book.
Yes, sir.
Now, how did that start, and when did that start?
Well, I'm kind of like you. I'm very busy. I'm always running pretty hard, and I preached a sermon series before COVID back in 2019 called Rest Stop Ahead.
All right, hold on. Why did you teach that, sir? What was the purpose?
Well, the purpose was to really encourage the church to create boundaries and to understand how to handle the craziness of life.
All right, hold on. Boundaries for what? Like, what do you mean?
Boundaries for when it comes to family, when it comes to work, when it comes to activities. You can be running so hard all the time. Mm-hmm. And I know in my own life I've really struggled with that, and God's had to teach me some incredible lessons in this area.
Yeah, so I remember that, and how I explain it to people, because I really actually like this series, is like when you feel like you're like not enough butter over too much bread and you're just getting scraped, like you need to be rejuiced.
Yeah.
That's what this kind of is. So this came from an experience of you being, I remember you just going, dude.
Yeah. I've had to learn the hard way. And one weekend I preached like 3 or 4 times on Sunday.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I was getting up, leaving early with my wife and one of the other high school students to run up to Lake Ann Camp up near Traverse City, which is our awesome camp that we're a part of. And I was preaching to the sixth graders, and it was a rough day. I woke up, I got ready, I got into the van. We were taking the church van. I had this big target, this big wooden target that I was using as a prop to preach, with during the week. And I got in the van, I started driving, and there was issues with the van. So to come back to the church, drop that van off, take the target that weighs like 800 pounds out of the van, put that in the other van, get in that van, get my wife, this other high school kid, I think my kids are with me too, and get in that van. We started driving. There's problems with that van, and I had to come back, and it was crazy, and I was just stressed out. I was sweating to death. It was 800 degrees that morning when we left. And by the time we got in the Cadillac, which is about an hour or so away from Lake Ann Camp, my heart started palpitating really hard, and we stopped at a Burger King, which, I mean, that can give you a heart attack right there.
Yeah, we'll take the Whopper with bacon.
We'll take the Whopper with heart attack.
Yeah, right.
But all of a sudden, like, I couldn't breathe, and I literally thought...
So you're having like a panic attack or something.
Yeah, but I didn't know that at the time.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought I was having a heart attack or something. I remember getting out of the car. We stopped. I told my wife, man, you might have to call 911.
Wow.
I mean, we were close to doing that. And it ended up being a panic attack. And I remember I was the kind of person always in the past where I would think, man, somebody who has a panic attack, that's like weakness.
Weak-minded, can't handle the pressure, doesn't know what they're doing.
That's it.
And you were like, wait a minute, I'm none of those things.
Yeah.
So then the research became, how in the world do I deal with it, which became into the book, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that started in 2019, and you did the sermon series, and then when did you decide to make it into a book? Like, when did that happen?
Well, I think it was probably after I did the series and a little bit of time after that. I can't remember exactly, but then COVID hit, and that slowed things down because I was doing a lot of things for the church to help us through that period.
Yeah. So what was like the response to people after this? Like, did you get a lot of response going, yeah, that really hit me?
Yeah, I did. I wrote the series, and then when I wrote the book, I ended up purchasing quite a few copies of the book to give away initially to people in our church, and a good amount of people were impacted by it because I think it's a very relevant topic for all of us. We live in a very fast-paced culture and society, and so it was something that people were like, man, I can really relate to that.
Right. Well, the one thing you can do in this society, if you want to go faster, that's always an option, right?
Yeah.
Slowing down and taking time is the weird thing, and conversations are the things that's missed like the most. So,
yeah.
All right. So you were doing the book, and you sat down. How good of a writer? Like, what's your writing skills? Were you just like do, or are you like?
I'm the best writer in the history of the world.
We're gonna have to go to break. Something's broken.
So I've never done anything like this before.
So what was the experience like? Like, you sat down and you're like, oh, this is going to be awesome, and then you writer's block, or did it work? Or?
Yeah, at times there was writer's block, but because I write my sermons in kind of a mixture of points and manuscript style, like, I had a lot of thoughts that I could just kind of build off of, and then I started really using a lot of illustration and things from my own life. And so I would say God, it wasn't an easy process at all. It was pretty hard, but God really opened up my heart and mind to the things that I wanted to write. And then grammatically, I had someone edit it for me.
Spell check.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So like when you're going, because I know when I was doing mine, like, I had a whole bunch of little stories.
Yeah.
So I was just going through, and I was like, bang, 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 like 25 of them. And this is where I started, and I know this is the ending. And then I was like, how do I connect all this stuff, right? Like, I found that process extreme. I found the story part easy. I found the connecting part, like, really, really hard. And it's like, man, how is someone going to relate to this? And then I went through the I'm an idiot, this is the dumbest story in the history thing, and I'm stressing out, and I hate this book. Like, did you go through any of that stuff?
Yeah, I went through some of that as it relates to, like, trying to order the book. You know what I'm saying?
It's so hard, man.
Yeah, you'd have a chapter where you want to say something biblically, and then you want to surround illustration.
Yeah.
Surround it with illustration. And so some of those things were more difficult. Yeah, it definitely was one of the harder things I've ever done. And I will say that it's one of the more tedious things too. Like, it really, you have to really stay committed to it. I already had most of the material because, again, I wrote it out as sermon series, and I do write in somewhat of a manuscript style. So it was helpful to go back to that. But putting it together was a challenge. That's why it took like 2 or 3 years.
Right.
You know?
Like I had total respect for those guys because it was like I can get you the arc in the story and I can find those things. I have a knack for that stuff.
Yeah.
But like when you're putting in the fine details of it, I'm like, I are not smart. Like my brain's like, and I was just like, I remember just getting up and just, like you just gotta scream. And it's like total respect for those people that do that because it's like that's why like it's so hard to make a movie that's great or a book that's great because the story is so hard to get there and it's easy to skip the things that you think you need, right?
Yeah, exactly. There were times when I was afraid that I might be missing something, and that's why like going through it, spending time, the rough draft process was helpful and
how many rough drafts did you do?
Well, I mean, there was.
I know what I did.
There was there was multiple rough drafts as far as like having to make changes. Now, I didn't have a pile of papers necessarily because I just was on my computer the whole time, but I was always adjusting and changing. At times I was, cutting major sections out.
Like, did you find yourself, like, never being satisfied? That's what I found. I was like, no matter how good it was, I'm like, it just still sucks right at this point. Or I don't like this. And I'm like, I was hypercritical of, like, my story. And I was sitting there looking, I was like, dude, I don't know if I want to sit in this. Like, writers are like a special breed of people that they're like superhuman to me. I can't do what they do. And I'm like, here's my toys, make it better. Like, I feel so dumb around them, The fact that you did that's very cool, actually.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that process there. That's why I wanted to get that process because I know, like, with mine is still ongoing in like 2 or 3 years. It makes me feel so much better. Yeah. Right? And the thing is, like, if you're doing this, like, I find to have constructive people that are good in the air. Like, my wife edits for people that do that. So I'm like, here. And then she comes back and there's all kinds of red. And I'm like, no, nobody actually likes you. And you're ugly today. Because it's like, it's not you, but it feels like it,
Yeah.
And when you're putting something out that's biblically based to help people get in there, it's super important that you get there. And the subject that you're doing it on is about stretching yourself thin, I think is probably the most normal thing people don't know they're doing. Like, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really easy to get sucked into that for sure.
Yeah, because you have the job, the kids, the wife, the relationship, the extended family, which is its own issue, and then friends, right? And those top 5, if you don't even add in church, politics, and life, which I know no one talks about politics at all or anything, but it's like... It's like those subjects is overwhelming sometimes between the bills and the family and stuff. So like, how did you kick it off? What was the first, like, what was your start off point in your butt?
Well, the focus really in the beginning had to do with my own experiences and some of my own struggles. And pretty quickly into the book, I began to talk about boundaries and some of the boundaries that I had to set early on in my ministry and my family, because I was like running really hard. And I was a youth pastor for 3 years before I even married my wife, Tammy.
And not only are you like running really hard in the ministry, you're actually running hard in real life and dodgeballing and all that crap, right?
I was, yeah.
Which, God bless you for that. I'm like, that's why they taught us how to use weapons. So, you did that on purpose. Like,
well, that's why I got out of youth ministry. I was getting sick of getting hit in the face with dodgeballs.
Yeah, but you got to like stretch to go to church.
Yeah, so for the book, in the beginning, the inspiration really had to do with my own life and thinking through what God has to say about rest from Genesis to Hebrews to, the boundaries that we must have. And so setting boundaries, that was a really important thing. And sometimes what I found too is like you really spread yourself thin the most after a victory, not after a loss. And
before you get into that, we're going to our first break. If you haven't gone to spiritualwarfareunit.com, please do that. Hit like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Taking a quick break from our podcast, I wanted to let you know about our life application program that we have for churches and nonprofits in the area that are trying to find programming that they can use in case the corona shuts you down and you're not able to get in. You go to spiritualwarfareunit.com. You click on our episodes, and you can check out our programs for as little as $29.99 a month to make sure that we're still getting the word out to those people that need it. Now, back to the program. All right, welcome back to the Warrior's Way. Our warrior this week is John, and he's from Emmanuel, and we were just getting into his book about spreading yourself too thin and getting overworked. And the Lord knows the best thing about ministry is people, and the worst thing about ministry is people. So you were just getting to set a boundary. So what was like the first boundary you wanted to hit, you know?
Yeah, so in the chapter on boundaries, one of the very first ones that I developed early on in my relationship with my wife and my kids was 3 nights on, 4 nights off.
What does that mean?
It means that I really try to be home more than I'm going to be away. You know, it's easy to get to the place where you're so busy that you're neglecting the very people that you should be loving the most. And so, man, ministry in career jobs for all of us, we can be in a place to where we could be gone every night of the week.
Sure.
So I decided as a rule, not as a practice every single time, but as a kind of rule of thumb, to be home more in the evenings than I am away.
All right, so where did you get that concept from? Like, where was it at?
It's not necessarily something in the Bible. It was just something very practical. So some of these things with boundaries are practical.
Personal choices.
Yeah, the personal choices that I just kind of created on my own. But things that I think that can, you know, I didn't want my kids to look back and think, man, he loves people in the ministry more than he loves us, because he's with them more than he's with us.
Well, you know, it does say not to provoke your kids to wrath, and avoiding the things that they like because you're too busy for them tends to be one of those subjects. So technically, if you wanted to look at it from that perspective, you got it there. All right, so making sure you're making time for the friends and family, hanging out and the kids. Okay, that's step one. What's the next boundary?
So a couple other things that I wrote down in the book, you know, that are great boundaries. Number 2, I'm not accessible every moment of every day.
And what do you mean by that?
I mean that everybody always needs you, not just in ministry, but also like in a career, in a job. I mean, you can't be accessible at every moment of every day. You can't be 24/7 on the clock. And what I found is with our smartphones, with the internet, social media, it's so easy for people to contact you all the time. And so for me, that was a struggle early on. Like I'd be counseling or dealing with people at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. Not that that's wrong, because there are times when I schedule to do that.
Yeah, because they're working and it works for them.
Yeah, but I can't be available just when someone needs me to be available. And the thing that I found is in most situations, the crisis that someone has, it can wait till tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
So so I want to make sure I'm having this understood correctly. So if you don't take the time for you and you get burnt out, you're not going to be help to these people, and you identified like something must have happened to go, boy, I gotta lock this in. Like, what was that?
Yeah, I think like what happened was I could at times be on vacation or be at home.
And you're taking calls?
And I'm taking calls and things that I didn't need to do. You know, it wasn't necessary. And the person, you know, and I would make the excuse, well, this person really needs me. Well, this person wants you. They don't need you right now.
So do you think you were taking that call for you at the time, like because they need me and I'm important? Like, was it like an ego deal?
It's definitely partially a pride thing.
Wow.
It's definitely an insecurity thing. It's definitely also with a good motivation too. It's kind of a blend of all that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's like look how important I am. Even on my vacation, they can't live without me, right?
Yeah.
That's actually like a catch-22 thing, right there.
It is, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you identify that? Was it like, did your wife help you with that, or you're just like, whoa, I've been doing this too much?
Yeah, typically you have blind spots and areas like that.
Yeah.
So my wife kind of identified it.
And I'm sure she was very genteel and kind. I love your wife so much. Like sometimes she's like, do this. And I'm like, yay. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I can imagine being on a vacation and I can just see her face. It's like, really?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this, though. Kind of a funny story. They got me back one time because the first time we went to Disney, we were in, where was it? We were in that Coke store that has all the different Cokes from around the world.
Yep.
So I had to take a call. And
had to.
Yes, I had to. I stepped out. I took a call. I came back in. And this is the very first time. And so I'm Italian. So anything Italian tastes good, man. Right? Pasta, pizza, sausage, the sauce. Oh, the sauce.
Oh, the sauce.
Anyway.
But the Coke.
The Coke version, I can't remember what it's even called, from Italy. they gave me a little bit of that, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good, and I tasted it. It was the most bitter thing. It almost choked me to death, and they did it on purpose, and it was hilarious, and I deserved it.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
So it's funny how, as an experience, because one of the things, like I tell people in ministries in support of what you're saying is like, if you're working for people, if you're not keeping yourself in a devotional book, like a sponge, like you love people as much as you want, but eventually that sucker goes dry. And if you don't fill that thing back up, it'll eat you alive just because people are people and they constantly need help, right?
Yeah.
So that is a huge boundary. All right, so you got the first two boundaries. What was next?
Well, I would say some of the practical things that I try to, first of all, eliminate the 24/7 accessibility. 3 things. When you're home, be home. Have a time boundary. In my family comes first. Those are 3 things.
Hold on, you can't just jump through the stuff.
I know.
I know you know it.
It's a lot of stuff.
So,
I know.
like, do you shut your phone off? You say from this time to this time I'm out. Like,
yeah, that's it. I had to put my phone down and focus on my kids, my wife. I mean, that's easier said than done, but that was a thing. I had to make sure I did that. When you're home, you're home. So be home emotionally. That was something for me.
Yeah.
To be there.
So you're not just physically there. You're checked into what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to care about what they're doing, to be there for them. So that was a big thing for me.
And the reason why that was a good point is because when we start doing this, it's like, oh, it's great. People know who you are. Hey, how are you? And all this crap, right? And then the phone's like, ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. And I'm like, and then my wife's like, I called you 3 times. I was like, honey, I don't even have it on. I don't even have the ringer on. I just shut it off because it doesn't stop making noise. And I was like, every time you think you have a good idea, and I was like, whoops.
Yeah.
But it's awesome helping people. But man, that responsibility as being a servant to the community is a tough one. And if you don't maintenance yourself, I agree with you. I think it's a big miss. All right, what was the last one on that real quick?
The other 2 were have a time boundary and my family comes first. And they kind of all work together. So, I mean, having a time boundary really relates to, again, when are you going to be off the clock? And
so you allow time to be off the clock.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I mean, and the thing is, like, if it's an emergency where someone is about to commit suicide or someone's died, that's a different story, right?
Yeah.
But again, what I said earlier is most situations can wait till the next day. I've heard preachers in large churches really teach this too. I've heard Andy Stanley talk about it. I'm not going to lose my family over your desire when it's not even a need that has to take place, get fixed in that moment.
Allow the emotions to drain, and we can talk about it. You almost need that time anyways, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So that's where you started from. I think those are great points at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then you went into what? What was the next section that you wanted to hit?
Well, we really had to focus on, how to figure out how to respond after a victory, right? Sometimes
that was a weird one when you said that. I was like, dude, I handle winning very well. I won and you lost. Yay.
The perfect story, though, is in 1 Kings, and it talks about the story of Elijah. Do you remember after overcoming the 450 prophets of Baal and Asherah and all that? It's a great story, right?
That's the one where he pours it down full of water. I dare you all day. They're trying, and then he gets the water in them and everybody, right?
Yeah, and he's making fun of them. Maybe your gods are sleeping. Maybe they use the bathroom.
Louder.
It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And then he prays to the God of heaven, the only God, of course, Jehovah God. He brings down fire from heaven. He licks up every drop of water. It's incredible. And all the people cry out to God. It's a great victory, but in that moment, it took incredible emotion, incredible effort, and God did the work, don't get me wrong.
And then he took off, right?
Well, the thing about it was, Ahab, the king, was there, but Jezebel, the evil queen, was not there. And then she finds out about it, and she, threatens to take Elijah's life. And he freaks out. He panics.
Right.
He falls into depression. He's not eating. He's not sleeping. And it's amazing how, sometimes the most susceptible times to us falling into depression are right after a victory because we're exhausted, gone through so much.
So explain this in a way that makes sense. So as a person that played sports in you, once you reach that goal, there's excitement and also relief, right? All right, we did it.
Yeah.
And then that's done. Mm-hmm. So to get hit right after you accomplished a goal, you're actually in a weak point emotionally and physically. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's why you need to rest after a victory.
All right, so what does that entail? Like, what is your suggestions?
Well, I mean, remember, Jesus did the same thing with his disciples after they had performed miracles. He performed the miracles, but he used them. Often he would try to take them to the other side of the lake so that they could get some solitude, some rest. And he saw that as necessary. He forced them into doing it. And I think, like, after a great victory, I mean, it takes so much. Here's a good example for me in my own life. After preaching, not that every Sunday is a victory with, all sorts of impact, but there's been so much that's been given toward the ministry there that rest is really necessary, to the point of where, like, it'd be easy to get depressed, and you become susceptible to people's criticisms. You become susceptible to depression because you just get so frustrated and discouraged when you don't feel well. And so that's the thing.
So just to make this make sense in my brain for the less intelligent people, is like you peak, right? So it's like working out and you do a great workout, and then afterwards you're just gassed. And then that's when all the negative thoughts and all the doubts and all that stuff comes in, when you've wasted your energy out on whatever it was you were shooting for, and you got it, and God used you, and this is this great thing, and yay. And then that moment, I got to be honest, and it's not something I'd thought about until you had brought it up, because it was like, well, yeah, you're going to be tired, but then you just get up and you do it, but it's not that's not how it works, right?
Yeah, it's not that easy. Here's another thought to it, too. After a victory, think about it in the business world, right? You land a big contract, and things are moving in a good direction.
Yep.
You always feel like after a big victory, that's when you need to strike because the iron is hot and keep going. But the problem is you can't do it. And if you do it, your efficiency, your effectiveness is not going to be at the same level. But we tend to think that way, like, oh, man. Like after Easter, right? God brings us a lot of people. Oh, man, we got to just keep. But we're so tired. Like at that point, you're not going to be able to be as effective with people. Yeah. You're not going to be able to, do what you just did. You have to rest.
And was there like a specific thing that happened that was like, oh man, that story where it was like, this is happening, or was it an accumulation of things that you had already accomplished?
And I think it's more of an accumulation. For me in my own life, like after God's really blessed in some way, I feel like if I don't do something to sustain that success, then it's not going to continue, which is a problem right there, because God is the one who creates the success, not you. You're just the instrument. And so what happens is if you don't rest and just trust God, first of all, we have this fear, like if we don't take advantage of this opportunity, we're going to lose what just happened. And that's so unbiblical, right? Because it's all in God's hands anyway. So for me, I got to the place of where, you know what, after I've worked hard, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to rest. And you know what? It's not going to all fall apart. You know why? Because it's God's church anyway. It's God's ministry anyway.
Like the thing I like about that sentence is you gave yourself permission to do it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how much we won't do that part. It's okay to just take a break, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to the next one, we got to go to our next break. If you haven't gone to Spiritual Warfare Unit and like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, do that. Hit weareemmanuel.life to check out what they're doing, and we will be right back.
I'm really impressed with the teaching
All right,
that
and we're just
Isaac
gonna
has been bringing to us, as this is all based from Proverbs.
I like it because it's simple, and it doesn't matter who you are. It's very easy to understand and apply to your life.
It points out, my bad parts, and, but it's showing me how to do the good parts. And, I'm trying to apply that and, make a better life for myself, because I'm tired of where I've been.
It's impacted a lot of the guys as they continue to talk and ask questions after the meetings, as they speak to one another regarding the meeting and the messages and the topics that are being brought up, which are down-to-earth topics of situations and things that we live with on a day-to-day basis.
He takes the Bible and he breaks it down into simple terms and where you can understand. And like I said before, sometimes a lot of churches, even the Salvation Army, sometimes we start using these big words that people don't understand, like even saying someone got saved. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean when you say someone got saved? And it's accepting Jesus into your heart. So it's like words like that we use that people don't understand.
It's just very interesting how he points out, the different things of, the sin part, and then he comes back with the, how to make it better, and he just points it out. It's there. I didn't know all this stuff was in there, but now that he's pointing it out, it's like, wow, I guess if you really dig into the Bible, you find these things.
This is a daily moral standards that we can live by, that the teachings are coming from. And honestly, we can take verse by verse as what he's done, and pretty much he's done the hard work for us, and now laying it out so that we have an easier understanding.
There's some people who don't like to be in Bible classes, but this one seems to get their attention.
In studios, I'm here with John Scaley from Emmanuel, and we were just talking about his book about making boundaries, being in ministry, which is probably a topic that should be talked about more, because how many people you've seen on fire and they're still doing work and all of a sudden they fizzle out, right?
Yeah.
And that's because the people just suck you dry spiritually, and you get wore out, and then you start getting bitter and mad, and that's like what happens, right? So what was the last one we were talking about? Boundaries for what?
Boundaries for marriage, for your children.
Marriage and time and something or other. So giving yourself the time to say, all right, I need a time out and take some rest.
Yeah.
Right? Which, with my experience of being in a brain injury, like I have these ruts, and it's like we would get to meetings and it's like 7:30 and everybody's talking. I'm like, see ya. And that happened all the time. Well, I do that because I have got to get to bed. And if I don't get to bed the next day, I'm paying for it. And I set those. I'm a real big respect. I'm looking forward to getting this book. And where are you selling it right now?
Right now it's just on Amazon.
What's the title?
Rest Stop Ahead.
Rest Stop Ahead. All right. So if people go to Amazon and go to Rest Stop Ahead, how much is that? $3, $4, $7, something.
Yeah, it's like $12.99. It's not
$12.99. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. The paper copies are always better. And
I don't even. This is the first time I've ever done this, so I just picked a number.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
It's whatever. So I like that it's blue and white. It reminds me of my handicapped guy in the back of my plate. Whoever made that sign had no sense of humor. That guy looks like he's got to find a restroom. All right, so we're in here. We're taking a rest. And so what was the next step? Because it's curious how your brain works of what was first one and then second one and third one, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we talked about getting toward the end of the book was imitation rest.
What does that mean?
It means that sometimes you can fake it till you make it, but then you're not really making it.
All right, how do you fake rest?
Yeah, I think like rest is something to put it very bluntly that you have to give a priority to. And so for me, like sometimes I wouldn't take a full day off, or sometimes I,
What does that mean? Like you took the day off, but then you went up to the office anyways?
Yeah, that's the problem.
All right,
or else I was working from home.
All right, hold
like
on. I know you're working for Jesus, and it's like the 401k is really great. But having a day off means that you don't go in.
No, I know that.
Are you sure? Because you just said you were faking it.
I know, but it's like
I could see you on your day off and going, crap, I got to take this call.
Yeah.
Like I can see that one.
Yeah.
But you're like, no, I'm going to go in the office after I told nobody was going to be there so they can pester me.
Yeah.
Like I'm slow.
No, I know. I mean, I'm not saying I know you're slow, but we've been friends for a long time.
I'm saying like as slow as I am, I got that one figured out, bud.
Yeah, so here's a point in the book. Token rest doesn't fool anyone, including your own body. Rest is not a 5-minute break at work in the break room. Rest is not a token day off that's still filled with phone calls, emails, and work projects. Rest is not a quick fix. Rest is deliberate. Rest is concentrated. Rest makes sacrifices. And there's more I could say. And the point is, like, and I find myself doing this sometimes at night where I'm laying in bed and it's time to go to sleep and I can't turn my brain off because
it's horrible.
I'm thinking of 8 million things. And
how do you stop doing that?
Yeah, I mean, my wife tells me to deep breathe and just to stop thinking.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
Who knew?
Well,
just stop doing it. I don't even know how I'm thinking. I don't even know how it turned on. It just won't shut off.
Yeah.
No, good for you. Like me, I don't know what to do, how to shut that off.
It's hard. I think it's easy just to assume token rest is rest, but it's really not.
Because like when you say token rest, what I think of like to go do something I like to do.
Yeah.
And like for me, I'm gonna go play chess, and I'm gonna have somebody go play chess, and I'm like, that's my happy time.
Yeah.
And it allows my brain just to shut off on all the other things and just focus on one thing. So like, as far as like doing that, is that like, would you consider that to be a successful way to be able to carry that out?
Yeah, I do, because something.
Like, what do you do for fun then?
Something that I enjoy watching Michigan football for one.
No kidding.
And Red Wings hockey.
Yeah, they're
Actually,
doing good. Yeah.
Red Wings won Michigan football too. But I would say, I mean, for me, it sounds crazy to say this, but just simply doing nothing is rest for me. So like, typically like on a Friday night, I'll come home, go out to dinner with my wife. We'll watch some murder mystery on ABC because she's, planning on killing me. But
We have a witness.
But I mean, those are the things that are good for me, And so, yeah, things that you enjoy to do that.
So for you, like, sports is the things that decompresses your brain. You can just go, that's not a foul, and you feel good. Right?
You got me there. Sometimes it's more stressful, right?
Not that I've seen you have the conversations about it. I come in, it's like, and you're bouncing around. I'm like,
so I enjoy
much
working
less
out,
stressful.
working out, stuff like that.
So if we were just to give people an example, something that keeps your brain occupied on something else other than what it's focused on, would you consider that to be a good answer?
Yeah, and I think rest is something that it's healing your mind and your body, right?
And by rest, you just don't mean sleep. Like
Yeah.
relaxation.
Relaxation. So my wife just told me this the other day, and I'm sure it's absolutely true. Like, if you're getting 5 or 6 hours of sleep versus someone who's getting 7 or 8 hours of sleep, you're way more susceptible to heart disease and diabetes and stroke and all these kinds of things. Your body needs physical rest, and your body needs mental rest, and your body needs spiritual rest.
And if you were going to give spiritual rest, because that's not really a subject people talk about, it, how would you accomplish that? Like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, spiritual rest is a combination of a lot of things. It's being in the Word of God, spending time with God, letting, as it says in Romans 12:2, letting the Word of God just change your mind. You're not being conformed to the world, but you're being transformed, renewed in your mind, and that's what the Word of God, it washes over you. So you need that.
All right, so let's give people some examples. I think I know what you're talking about, but I just
Yeah.
want to be sure.
Okay.
So, like, for me, there's certain stories that are cool.
Yeah.
All right? Like, for whatever reason, the Jericho story seems extremely cool to me because we just marched around and then all this crap fell over, and I find it funny.
Yeah.
Right? So I like to look for things that I find that are hilarious, like stories that are funny, and when I read that, I laugh about it because, like, comedy and Christianity, most people will go, oh, yeah, those people are hilarious, right? That's not what comes out of it. And so for me, I try to set up particular stories because I'm always checking on myself and how do I improve as a person, and I have my things that I look at, but looking for those stories. So if you were going to tell somebody, you should totally read this story because it's super great, like, what would those be?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if you wanna get the gory and the crazy, you read the Book of Judges, where Agag gets his bowels gushed out or something like that. I mean, if you really
Samson,
yeah,
that's
I
pretty
mean,
good.
if you really want to read stories that are crazy like that,
Yeah.
I mean, for
Some
me,
people don't know. I mean,
yeah. I mean, for me, it's some of the old time stories that mean the most. Like David overcoming Goliath. Like, he literally had boldness against a giant, and I think it's important that we take a stand for God, even when others are not. So that's a story that will always go down in my heart as a great story. I mean, there's all sorts of unique stories. I mean, I think of Solomon when the two women were fighting over the child, and the one had crushed the other one and then traded the other one in the middle of the night, which is kind of a weird deal. But like, Solomon's, they're screaming over whose baby it really is, and Solomon's like, well, bring me a knife, I'll cut the baby in half and give you half, and the other half, the other
And the
half.
real mom said no.
Yeah.
And the ability to think in that process, right?
Yeah.
I just, some of those stories, because the thing is, you apply a lot of that wisdom into today's process of thought and how people do things, and it's amazing how it works. And it's just not a story; it's applicational, right?
Yeah.
And if you could just sit down and mentally see that, I look at that as a time, like as a spiritual timeout, and I'll laugh because if I was in that spot, I would have done, and it's like, that's not true, right? And you sit there, and it's just like, those are the types of things, and I don't think people look at the Bible as fun. sometimes, but it is like that Samson one where he's like, oh, no, it's my hair. Yeah, you got to cut my hair. And then she binds him and cuts his hair. He's like, oh, it's crazy. And it's just like he kept messing with her. And then until he finally got busted, because he was in love with this woman, and what guy hasn't been in love with the wrong woman, or vice versa, where that relationship is coming. And I don't know. As you know, I look at things in a very funny scenario.
Yeah.
It's like I can see those things. So, all right, that was a good thing for the spiritual timeout, just to get those stories and be able to relax and see. So we got those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps that we went into. So what was the next rest stop that you hit?
Well, I mean, I think that's the majority of the book, to be honest with you. Like toward the end, I just focused on the reality of what the Bible talks about in Hebrews as it relates to rest, and how in Hebrews, the story in Hebrews is all about how Jesus is superior to everything. Jesus is superior to Moses. The rest that he offers is superior to the rest that the Israelites received in the Promised Land and in Canaan. So the rest that Jesus offers is rest, spiritual rest and salvation, right? Do you know Christ as your Savior? That's an important thing. If you're saved, then your priority should be focused on Christ. And part of the priority that God brings into our life is that we do rest. That's something that's underrated. But even from the very beginning in creation, what does he do? On the seventh day, God rests. Is it because God needed rest? No, but he gives us a pattern, an example of what we're supposed to do.
So the pattern from creation is do the work and then rest, and then do the work and then rest.
Yeah, I think so. So like, in the spiritual rest, you're able to focus on God. So the Sabbath day has kind of changed since Jesus died and rose again from the grave. But our day of spiritual rest now really is Sunday, where we gather to learn the word and to encourage one another. And we rest in Christ, and we're filling up, right? We're filling up.
All right. Well, this is perfect. We got to go another break. This goes so fast. We are Emmanuel.life. You can go on there and check out what they're doing. If you have not liked, share, and subscribed on YouTube, please do that. Help the other people on spiritualwarfareunit.com. Sit tight. We'll be right back. With Chad, he's here with our drug dog, Hans, and he's been a big hit at the Depson Dogs. Tell everybody a little bit about Hans for us.
Hans is the man. Hans loves to find drugs. We take Hans and we search different rehab facilities, schools. We actually got Hans to serve the public. So, anybody in the public sector that wants any type of search, if you send a kid to rehab and you want your house swept before you come home, feel free to give us a call. Schools, they're great deterrent as well.
I'm here with the regional chaplain down Genesee County. Kenny is here. They do great work inside the jail. Can you tell us a little bit about the programs that you guys have inside the jail?
Yeah, we have an opportunity that the sheriff allows us to come into the jail as guests to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with each one of the inmates that want to hear that. We have programs inside the jail that we have Bible studies. We have people that come in and do one-on-ones as the inmates request it. But all of that's an opportunity to give them a choice at a different life than with the choices that they've been made to get here.
Outstanding, and they're one of our partners in the community to help people who are one of the people that help win, help us, help you, help those people around. I'm here with AJ. He's one of the committee members from Back to the Bricks. How do you think it's going today, bud?
Good. Yeah, I mean, everybody's here, everybody seems happy, and we're doing it up in Flint just right.
Yeah, it's been a really good time. We're right by the jail, hanging out with some very cool cars. And right to our left is their son was a deputy who had passed away. And so what they do is they have his car come out and they show it off at the different shows. We're sitting down here with UCAN and Reach the Forgotten, Spiritual Warfare Unit, and Depson Dogs, and Back to the Bricks, of course, with the cars, because you guys are the cool kids.
We try.
You do it good. All right, we'll be around. All right, welcome back to the Warriors Way UCAN Studios. I'm here with John Scaley, and he's got his book Rest Stop Ahead. That's on Amazon, and we were just finishing up with that. Thank you so much for putting that out. It's going to be a help to people if you're when people are in real-time ministry. The people are the best and worst thing, right? And it's getting the rest and keeping that mindset that you're not doing the ministry to do the ministry. You're doing that for God, because that little switch kills everything, right? So we were just finishing up with that, and then you said that Emmanuel has a guy named Abdu Murray coming on, and he's an apologist. First of all, explain what an apologist is, and then explain who he is. Go ahead.
Yeah, apologetics is a defense of the scriptures, defending truth, and so that's really what he does. He goes around, he preaches and teaches.
All right, so who is this guy?
So he is an incredible guy. He is a former Muslim who came to know Christ as Savior. He has a PhD from the University of Michigan. Go Blue. I first heard him speak a few months ago when at Lake Ann Camp he was brought to do some training for the staff and the board.
Okay.
And he's just a phenomenal leader and teacher. And what he does is he has his high school kids bring their friends over to his house almost every weekend, and basically they just talk through cultural things. Sexuality, identity, all these different things, and people ask all sorts of questions.
And so, what is it that his specialty is?
Yeah, and apologetics. So that's defending the scriptures. So he used to be the executive director of Ravi Zacharias. So he's been involved.
And who's that guy?
So he was an apologist who was an incredible leader and speaker. He ended up having some issues at the end of his life, but he's well known for being someone who understands how to take the word of God and to defend truth.
So he's a person that is, from a religious standpoint, a defender of a faith, and the faith that he's a defender of is Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, talking about, I think it's 1 Peter 3:15 that talks about always being ready to give an answer of the hope that is in you, and so that's what he's able to do. And
all right, so you guys are having this dude come in next month. Is this something there's tickets or people sign up for?
Yeah, so November 19th is a Saturday. We're having a major event at 7 p.m. It's really designed for 13 years old on up.
Okay.
And so we're really looking for junior high, high school, and even college kids, but adults are welcome to come too. It's not like a youth event. It's more like a big church event.
Well, what kind of questions does he normally field so people know what to be interested in? What questions would they want to be able to ask this guy?
Well, they can ask him anything. He's going to do 2 different 15-minute sessions, identity, sexuality, some of those things.
All right, hold on. What is that? Identity, sexuality?
Yeah, I mean, right now with the transgenderism thing that's going on, a lot of people have questions about that.
So he'll speak about the biblical position of that, and then people can ask questions.
Yes, he's going to do a 15-minute talk, and then what's going to happen after that, you'll have 45 minutes to an hour where the people are there can ask any question.
So it'll be like some kind of a mic and then come up in this.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what's the other?
So then Sunday is going to be the same thing. It's just going to be on Sunday at our church.
Okay.
So he's going to do a couple different talks and do the same thing. But the audience will be a little bit different, of course, on Sunday.
Okay. And what is the purpose of having him out for?
Yeah, the purpose is this. I've had a real concern for a long time with deconstructionism. And basically, you're watching like 65 to 85%, depending on which information you look at, of young people that are leaving the church after the age of 18 and people just walking away from God. And, the question is, were they ever saved to begin with? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that it's a real epidemic. And so it's important for us to be able to help young people get their questions answered and to see God for who he is. I mean, the question always gets asked, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, that's a question that could push someone away from even believing in God.
Sure.
So, that's the kind of question that he'll answer. It's the kind of question that he'll deal with, and that's
so
what
for people that are interested in that, he's going to be the type of person that's going to be able to guide you to the correct answer to these types of questions. So if you're in that environment, you'll be able to have a biblical response that will be positive for that person. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, but I would say that less about equipping people and more about answering their concerns. Like a lot of people, a lot of our younger generation, they're struggling with Christianity right now for a number of different reasons. Some of it is the hypocrisy that they're seeing and the legalism that they're seing. That's a big issue. But some of it, too, is just the culture is coming down on them so hard. I mean, some people would say, some of our kids, they go away to secular college and they're taught, well, the Bible is not inerrant. And here's 1, 2, 3. There's 35 reasons why it's not. Well, there's different understandings of what inerrancy is. And I think he's going to be the kind of person that's going to help us to recognize biblically the answers that we need to have in order to realize that God God is real. God is incredible. Look at what he's done. We know that. And neither one of us are walking away from the faith anytime soon, but the younger generation is really struggling with this.
Yeah, and from my experiences, that belief comes in because there's lack of action from us through our actions. A lot of words, a lot of talking, but not a lot of action. And that's why, producing action is what you're about, and that's what I'm about, and that's why we work together. So you have that going on. You got any other events coming up? You did have the Upwards basketball for the kids coming up, which will be a big thing, right? And then anything else that you got kicking in here pretty soon?
Well, let me just say one more thing about Abdu Murray. I would really, really encourage you, please, please, please come to this event on the 19th. That's Saturday night. Now,
at 7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock. Most of you have your own churches, I would think, if you're watching, and some of you maybe don't. And you're welcome to come on the 20th, but we're not trying to get people to leave their church. That's why we're doing this 2 different days, basically. We want you to come on the 19th and bring your young people. And you can go to weareemmanuel.life. There's a link for this. You can sign up with how many people you think you're going to bring, because we're going to have pizza. Because, of course, you got to have pizza.
Food, man.
Yeah.
And when you're telling it has to be food.
That's right. So 6 to 6:50, somewhere in that range, we'll have pizza, and then the event will start at 7.
You expect people to eat pizza in 10 minutes?
No. 6 to 6:50. That's 50 minutes.
Oh, I thought you said 6:40. We were going to start feeding pizza at 6:50, and I'm like... I'm quick, but I ain't like...
You need your fingers to count that?
I did. Luckily, it didn't get past 10, so I was in trouble. I got boots on. All right, so it was, first of all, it's super great to see you. And now that we got that out of the way, how is this, doing this in real life, do you have actual differences in your life now as far as managing your time and your places and your people and your stuff that you've seen growth in,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is something that I talked to our staff about, going back to Rest Stop Ahead. And for me in my own life, I've set boundaries now. I mean, you're smiling at me because I'm not perfect in this area. And I still struggle in this area. But I would say that, there are things now that, I had a situation just recently with a lady who's panicking over something. And I told her, in a short period of time, I cannot deal with this right now. In the past, I would have taken an hour and dealt with it. And so God's really taught me some things. And eventually, I think people begin to understand. If you tell them no enough, they begin to understand, all right, I need to schedule this. I need to plan for this. And I need to, unless it's an emergency. But again, 99% of the time, it's not an emergency.
And one of the things that I love about this, being a person who has struggled with injury, massive injury, is that I get my 6 hours outside, right? And I get my 6 hours, and I got to schedule that time, and this is the time I get, and we're including drive time, right? It took me 10 years to figure that out, because there wasn't a book like this that I could go, oh, gee, would you look at that? That's genius, right? It's like plugging out time, and you got to deal with the family and the stress, and Uncle so-and-so's coming over, and oh, Lord, you got to deal with that. And then when he gets out of here, then, then there's the aftermath of the conversation of the person being there, and the family functions, and the kids, and the job, and it's just like, and not understanding there was a big response of how to do that. That's what you're presenting, which is really cool. And it's called Rest Stop Ahead, and it's on Amazon. You guys can check it out. I'm definitely going to be picking up a copy of that, and I appreciate you coming on. If I had to ask you a percentage of how much your wife was involved in this process, what's the answer to that?
Well, 100%. She did not write any of the book, but the motivation behind it was my own struggle in my own marriage and with my own kids. And I just
wait a minute. As a parent, you or as a pastor, you struggled with your wife and kids. What?
I mean, my wife struggles more with me, but
I'm on her side most of the time. But it's amazing. You mean you're a normal person?
I try to be.
That's so weird. It's weird. People think if you're a pastor, you got it all figured out. That's not the truth.
No, it's not really the truth at all.
Oh, it's almost like you're a normal person.
Almost, yeah.
So when the people come in there and go, well, you have to, and you're gonna, and the don't you know who I am speech, and the who you think you are speech, that you're a normal person.
Yeah. One
of the things that I love about you, I think it's probably my most favorite thing, and I know I'm a complimentary person, but you're a person who is a pastor who's a guy, instead of a guy that's a pastor. And there's a huge difference between those two, because the guy that's a pastor is the look at me, I'm benevolent, I'll tell you how to do it. And then it builds on that. And then when that person ultimately makes a mistake, which we all do, then those people that looking at that fall too, right? Because their faith is in him.
Yeah.
And you've made a really specific point to go, I'm just a guy, I'm following God, we're working for Jesus, but we're getting this done. And that has always been one of the things that has adhered me to you, because I can respect that. Because when you make a mistake, inevitably, I go, yeah, that's a guy that makes mistakes. And like someone asked me yesterday, like, well, you make mistakes. And I was like, yeah, I keep the list alphabetical so it's easier to find. That's a C, and you're like that. And that's one of the things that I love about the church and what you do, because to come as you are and just be who you are. And we understand that it's messy. If you could tell people about, we just got the new place out there in Grand Blanc, and tell people like what you mean when you say that it's messy. What are you trying to get to people to understand when you say that?
Yeah, I think it's important to be transparent. I think it's important to be real. All the things you just said, I really appreciate you saying that. And I think that's been one of the strengths of our relationship. We're real with each other, a little too real sometimes. But, I think people are looking for authenticity. They're looking for a place where it's genuine. A place where we don't play I do not play the good old boy club at Emmanuel. Like I killed that like the day and there was that when I came to Emmanuel, but I don't care.
You mean there was a clique in a church?
Well, I don't care if you've been saved 50 years or 50 seconds or you're a seeker. You're going to be treated the same. There are no high up families at Emmanuel. Everyone's treated the same now. It's just not maybe the way it used to be in some ways. And I'm not trying to criticize our church. I'm just trying to say, like,
you found having cliques to be unsuccessful.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's cliques anywhere you go, right?
Sure.
And you can't completely kill that. But we've created a culture to where there is transparency and there is kindness, and no matter where you have been or who you are, like, you're going to be treated with love and kindness. So.
And that's what I love about it. So if you haven't checked it out, there's 2 locations. There's one in Flint and there's one in Grand Blanc. You just go to the website, weareemmanuel.life. You can check those out. There's stuff for the kids to do. There's a candy thing coming, trunk or treat or something another. Where's that at?
So we're going to be involved in an outreach with Kersley High School.
Kersley High School.
In the next week or so, yeah. And then we are going to do a neighborhood thing in Grand Blanc. So we've got a couple things going on.
All right, so if people want to check that out, they're in there, they can check it out. John, thank you for coming on, buddy. Look forward to having the book. We'll catch up with you in about 6-8 months, see what's happening. I know you got some stuff on the stove. We'll get there. If this is your first time, thank you for popping in. Please go to spiritualwarfareunit.com and click on if people are struggling. Like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and we will see you next week. Area that's doing a lot of work that people should know about. Feel free to contact Spiritual Warfare Unit at 810-715-9319, and we would love to have them on to see what good they're doing in the community and find out their story. Thank you so much.
Spent so much time believing the lies. I knew I wasn't meant to live this way, but my walls came down when your love shone through. Now my life will never be the same. You love me too much to let me stay this way.